My wicked mother banned me from bringing my children to Christmas dinner, but my sister's kids were invited. I don't want those brats near me, they ruin everything, she screamed ruthlessly. So I decided to get my revenge by blocking her credit cards. A few seconds later, she started trembling in desperation. Before we begin, tell me in the comments what city you're listening from. I'd love to know how far this story has traveled. No one imagines a mother can hate her own daughter until they hear it with their own ears. Camilla Hayes was 36 years old and possessed the kindest heart imaginable. She was a single mother to 2 children, Ethan, 8, and Lucy, 5, whom she raised with love, effort, and a sweetness that would disarm the toughest person. She worked as a freelance graphic designer from home, and although she wasn't swimming in money, her home was full of laughter, drawings on the walls, and sincere hugs. This year, December 23rd, seemed perfect. Camilla was hanging lights with her children, Ethan and Lucy, while a soft Christmas carol played in the background. The living room smelled of freshly baked cookies and tangerine peels. On her dining table was a box of Christmas ornaments she carefully stored every year, like small family jewels. "Mommy, do you think Grandma will have gifts for us this year?" Lucy asked with a broken smile while holding a golden star. Camilla took a few seconds to respond. She didn't want to lie. Not again. "No, my love. The gifts aren't what's important. What's important is that we're going to be together." "Yes." Ethan looked at her sideways. At 8, he had already learned to read between the lines. That was the same answer he heard every year as the holidays approached. Camilla swallowed and continued decorating with a fake smile. She wanted to believe this Christmas would be different, that her mother, Eleanor, would open her heart for once, that her sister, Valerie, would stop looking down on her, and that perhaps they could all have dinner in peace. The phone rang just as Camilla put the star on top of the tree. She looked at the screen. "Mom." She felt a knot in her chest, took a deep breath, and answered. "Hello, Mom." The voice on the other end was immediate, dry, without courtesy or affection. "Camilla, I hope you don't plan on coming tomorrow with your children." The blood rushed to her stomach. Her hand began to tremble. "I'm sorry. I thought we were all going to dinner. You yourself told me." "Yes, you, but not them. I don't want those brats near me. They ruin everything. Your presence is enough. Be grateful I even invited you. Don't provoke me." The silence was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. The children in the background continued playing, oblivious to the dagger that had just been plunged into their mother's chest. Camilla tried to contain herself, but her mother's voice continued like a dull knife, scraping at her dignity. "They're loud, messy, spoiled, and I'm not here to put up with children screaming while I try to have a decent family evening. Valerie's children are coming, and that's more than enough." "Valerie's children are invited?" Camilla asked, feeling the air escape her. "Of course. They know how to behave. They aren't like your savages." Camilla closed her eyes. Everything flashed through her mind. The forgotten birthdays, the gifts that never arrived, the contemptuous looks, the rejections disguised as demands. And right there, in that instant, she knew something inside her had died. "All right," she said softly, her throat tight. "I hope so. And don't you dare show up without calling first." "Understood." The call was cut off without a goodbye. Camilla stood there with the phone still in her hand, as if waiting for someone to deny what she had just heard. Lucy approached and tugged on her sweater. "Was that Grandma? Are we going tomorrow?" Camilla nodded, trying to smile. The lie burned her tongue. "No, my love, it seems she changed her plans." Ethan crossed his arms, saying nothing. His eyes said it all. Hours later, with the children asleep, Camilla sat down in front of her computer. She opened the administration panel for the bank accounts. For years, she had managed a part of her mother's finances, an old promise she made to her father before he died. Her mother didn't know everything, but she knew that without those cards, she was lost. Camilla stared intently at the screen, hesitated for a second, and then, with a single click, blocked access to the cards. All of them. Not for vengeance, but for dignity. That same night, across the city, Camilla's mother tried to make an online purchase. Error. Then she tried to withdraw cash. Transaction failed. Her face, once arrogant, transformed into a gesture of confusion. She checked her wallet, looked for other cards, all unusable. Desperate, she tried to call the bank. The operator informed her that the account had been restricted by the holder. "This is robbery. They can't do this to me," she yelled with childish fury. But no one responded as she wanted. In her frozen mansion, surrounded by unnecessary luxuries and family photos she never looked at, she began to tremble. The security she felt from having control was crumbling brick by brick. Meanwhile, Valerie, her other daughter, was decorating her huge Christmas tree at her house with her 2 children. The dinner was being hosted at the family residence. She had everything, or so she thought: money, acceptance, prestige, but she lacked what hurt most: peace. The next day arrived filled with tension. Camilla prepared a special breakfast for her children and told them they would have their own Christmas dinner. Just the 3 of them. "Aren't we going to see Aunt Valerie?" Ethan asked while stirring his hot cocoa. "No, not this year. We're going to celebrate here, together. How about dinner in pajamas, movies, and hot chocolate?" Lucy clapped. Ethan just nodded with a tired smile. While that was happening at the Hayes residence, Eleanor tried to cover up her desperation. She pretended everything was under control, but her face was paler than usual. She called Valerie. "Something strange is happening. The accounts aren't working. She's doing something to me. I know it. This is her revenge. She wants to ruin Christmas." Valerie sighed. She didn't want more conflict. "Did you do something to her, Mom?" "Of course not. I just told her not to bring those children. That's all." "Mom, how do you think she took that? Are you listening to yourself? They aren't ours. They never were. They never fit in." The phrase hung suspended in the air. Valerie frowned. "What do you mean they never were?" Eleanor hung up. Valerie, unsettled, called Camilla. No answer. Minutes later, Eleanor began to have a strange episode. Her breathing quickened. Her hands trembled. She leaned on the wall, then the table, until she fell to her knees. Valerie arrived just in time to see her on the floor, pale, shaking, her eyes wide. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Something is happening to me. I'm being robbed," she cried as she tried to get up. "Who is robbing you?" "Her. Camilla. Her. Valerie hugged her, confused and scared, while dialing emergency services. That night, while toasts were made in a humble house amidst laughter, drawings, and hugs, in another house full of luxury, the beginning of a hell no one was prepared to face was taking place. And that was just the beginning. December 25th dawned with a strange silence at the Hayes house. The huge residence, located in an exclusive area of the city, seemed enveloped in a cold different from the climate. It wasn't winter that pierced the skin, but the tense atmosphere, the whisper of something unsaid that everyone sensed. Eleanor remained in her room with the excuse of a bad fall that, according to her, had affected her hip. The official version spread throughout the neighborhood was that a domestic accident caused by a slip in the kitchen. Valerie repeated the story with precision to every visitor or call, with an impeccable smile and rehearsed naturalness. "Mom is fine. It was just a scare. You know, age, marble is a danger." Luckily, it wasn't serious. But neither her voice nor her gestures had the firmness of other times. Her makeup covered the dark circles, but not the doubt that was beginning to grow in her gaze. Something about everything that had happened didn't sit right with her. Her mother was not a woman who broke easily. And that previous night, seeing her scream Camilla's name with wide eyes, trembling like a child, had left a bitter taste in her stomach. Camilla, for her part, tried to return to her routine, although nothing inside her was routine. She had spent Christmas night eating hot chocolate in pajamas with her children, watching animated movies, and hiding the urge to cry. She had laughed. She had worked hard to maintain the illusion. But when the children fell asleep, she sat silently on the sofa, with the Christmas tree lights blinking like a cruel mockery. No one had called her, no message, no Merry Christmas. Her mother had removed her from the family group chat. Valerie, as always, had stayed in the middle. An observer, a passive accomplice to a story that had too many chapters of injustice. That morning, Camilla went to a neighborhood cafe to meet Laura, her best friend since college. She was one of the few people she trusted completely. Laura already knew something serious had happened. "Your eyes are swollen," she said as soon as she saw her. "I slept poorly," Camilla replied, knowing the lie was obvious. They sat at a corner table. Camilla took a deep breath. Her voice came out broken. "Do you know what she told me? That she didn't want my children at dinner, that they would ruin it." "Your mother said that? In those exact words?" "Yes. And she said it as if it were logical, as if it were her right to discriminate against my children. What kind of person does that?" Laura remained silent. She knew that question wasn't looking for an answer. Camilla looked away toward the window. "And it's not the first time, Laura. She's been despising me for years, humiliating me. You know what it was like. Always the wrong daughter. Always the one who didn't fit in. But enough is enough. Last night, I blocked all her cards." Laura looked at her in surprise. "You had access to that?" Camilla nodded. "Since Dad died. He asked me to. He wanted to make sure she didn't waste everything. But of course she never knew. She never thanked me for anything. She never asked how I kept paying for her queen's life. I did it all these years and she still despises me. Laura took her hand. She knew Camilla's wounds were old, but this time they were bleeding differently. Meanwhile, at the residence, Eleanor tried to contact old acquaintances, former bridge partners, wealthy widows living off rent, old colleagues of her late husband. No one responded as she expected. Some wished her a speedy recovery. Others simply didn't answer. Her social image hadn't been what it used to be for a long time. Time, rumors, and small truths that had leaked out had been eroding her power, and she knew it. That's why her desperation grew. That's why her rage at Camilla increased. She couldn't tolerate feeling vulnerable. She couldn't stand not being in control. Valerie watched her from the doorway. Seeing her so agitated, so out of control, made her feel an inexplicable discomfort. "Mom, why didn't you tell me Camilla was handling your accounts?" Eleanor slowly turned her head. "Because it wasn't necessary, but it is now." "What happened? What did you do to her?" "Nothing. I just asked her not to bring her children. That dinner was for family. And her children are your family. They're your grandchildren. Don't mislead me. You don't know what it's like to have to raise a daughter who was never truly part of you." Valerie frowned. "What do you mean?" Eleanor got up with difficulty. She walked to the window. The reflection of her own face seemed to show her a truth she didn't want to see. "Nothing. It's just a figure of speech." But Valerie wasn't so sure anymore. Something in that phrase had pierced her, as if a door had accidentally opened a crack, revealing something that had been hidden for years. That night, Camilla put her children to bed early. Then she sat at her desk. She wanted to work, but her mind wouldn't focus. She opened her email, checked notifications, nothing, until she noticed something in the physical mailbox by the door. An envelope with no return address, just her name, written in fine letters. She opened it cautiously. It was a sheet of paper folded in three. Thick, perfumed paper. The handwriting was handwritten, elegant, but with unstable strokes. "The truth you seek is in the attic, but you must be prepared." Camilla read the sentence 3 times. She felt her heart pounding in her throat. Who had left that? What did the attic mean? Which attic? Then she remembered. The old house, the back room, the attic her mother never allowed her to go up to. A place full of padlocked boxes, dust, and memories no one wanted to see. The note had no more information, no signature, no clue. She didn't sleep that night. She tossed and turned in bed, thinking, fearing, wondering what it all meant. The truth about what? About her family? About herself? Meanwhile, someone was watching her. From a car parked across the street from the building, a man in a dark coat and hat was taking notes in a notebook. He had a photograph of Camilla, another of her mother, and a thick, half-open file. He didn't speak, didn't move. He just watched patiently. The next day, Valerie visited her mother again. She brought flowers, fresh juice, and some cookies. She feigned concern, but deep down she needed answers. "How are you feeling today?" "Better, but there are still things that aren't working." "What things?" "The accounts, the transfers, the cards. Nothing works. I'm trapped." "What if you talk to Camilla? After what she did to me? And you after what you told her?" Eleanor remained silent. "Mom, you said something strange yesterday about Camilla never being part of you." "What did you mean?" "I was upset. That's all." Eleanor got up, annoyed. "You don't understand. That girl was always different. Since she was little, she was never like you. She didn't talk the same. She didn't look the same. It was as if she didn't belong to me." "Didn't belong to you?" The question hung in the air. Eleanor slowly turned her head. "What are you saying?" "Nothing. I'm just repeating your words." But the seed had been planted. Camilla spent the day thinking about the envelope. In the evening, she went up to the building's rooftop. She needed air. From there, the city looked like a distant board of lights. She closed her eyes, trying to organize her thoughts. Then she heard a click. Someone was lighting a cigarette nearby. She turned her head. "I didn't know anyone else came up here," she said. The man looked at her calmly. He was wearing dark, discreet clothing. He was about 50, with a weathered face and attentive eyes. "I also didn't know Camilla Hayes lived here." She tensed, taking a step back. "Who are you?" The man smiled without malice. "An old acquaintance of your family. Let's call it someone who knows things." "What things?" "Enough to tell you that envelope wasn't a joke. The attic exists, and it's full of truths that not everyone wants you to see." "Who sent you?" "Let's just say there are people who believe you deserve to know. That's all." Before she could ask more, the man left. He went down the stairs without looking back. Camilla was left there paralyzed. The game had begun, and there was no way to stop it. Camilla couldn't sleep that night. The image of the mysterious man on the rooftop accompanied her for hours, just like the note in her mailbox, which seemed to burn from inside the envelope as if it had a life of its own. The phrase kept beating inside her head. The truth you seek is in the attic, but you must be prepared. Prepared for what? How deep could a secret hidden under a roof for decades be? Dawn found her sitting in the kitchen with a cup of cold coffee in her hands and her eyes fixed on nothing. Her mind went through fragmented childhood memories. Uncomfortable silences, looks that didn't match, screams that were avoided in public. One scene returned clearly. Her, as a child, running toward her mother with a drawing in her hands. Her mother barely looked at it. "You were always different, Camilla, harder to love." She said it without anger, without even intending to, like someone throwing an uncomfortable truth into the wind, without measuring the damage it could cause. At 9 a.m, she left her children at Laura's house. She didn't want to give too many explanations, just asked for a few hours. Laura, seeing her, knew it wasn't the time to ask. Camilla left with a small bag on her shoulder, without makeup, her hair tied in a low ponytail, and her eyes dark as if they hadn't closed in days. In front of the old family house, her breathing became heavy. The gate was still the same, with peeling paint and wrought iron ornaments that were once her mother's pride. She used the key she had kept on her keychain for years, although she hadn't entered since her father's death. The house was empty. Her mother was with Valerie that morning for a medical checkup. Fate, or whatever it was, gave her the perfect opportunity. The silence of the place was so thick it could be felt on the skin. Every step she took on the wooden floor creaked like a warning. She didn't turn on the lights, she just went straight to the back hallway. There was the ladder that led to the attic, hidden behind a small wooden door. She pushed it. It was difficult. It was stuck. After a few minutes of forcing it, it gave way with a dry thud. A cloud of dust fell from the ceiling. She coughed. She covered her mouth with the sleeve of her sweater and climbed step by step, feeling the air become denser with each ascent. Upstairs, the space was small, barely enough to crouch. The light entering was dim, filtered by a small, dirty window. Cobwebs hung like old curtains. The smell was a mixture of dampness, old wood, and secrets. There were many boxes, some broken, others closed with yellow tape, old clothes, photo albums, outdated Christmas decorations. Camilla searched carefully until she saw a wooden box different from the others. It was smaller, with golden hardware and a rusted lock. She tried to open it, but it was stuck. She pulled hard. The lock broke with a dry snap. Inside, everything was perfectly organized. There was a leather folder, several yellowed letters, loose photographs, and a clinical envelope with the name of a clinic she didn't recognize. The first thing she picked up was a photograph. Her mother, young, elegant, next to baby Valerie, and an empty space on the right where another person should have been. The photo was cropped. Camilla frowned and continued checking. Among the papers, she found an unsigned letter, written in shaky handwriting. "If you ever get to read this, I want you to know that I loved you from the first moment. I had no other option. They wouldn't let me choose. I was just a child and they decided for me. I'm so sorry. I looked for you, but they told me you had gone far away. If you only knew how many times I dreamed of hugging you, of explaining. They stole my life and yours too. Forgive me. Forgive me for giving you up." Camilla's heart began to beat fast. Giving you up? Who had written that? Was it her mother? The handwriting didn't match. No, this letter was from someone else. She folded it carefully and set it aside. She picked up the medical folder. It was thick. On the cover, St. Lucie Psychiatric Clinic. File number 045. Patient Natalia V. Her hands were shaking. She slowly went through the pages. They were clinical reports, diagnoses, anxiety crises, episodes of dissociation, escape attempts. In the final section, a summary. Patient presents schizoaffective outbreaks. It is recommended not to have contact with minors until prolonged treatment. Referral, containment area. The last sheet had a date, December 1989. Camilla had been born that same year. Everything began to spin in her head. A suspicion hit her stomach. She searched for more in the box with desperation. Underneath the documents, hidden between two envelopes, was a sonogram. On the back, a name written in faded marker. Natalia Velasquez. Week 32. And then the photo. An old image with folded edges. A young woman with a sad look embracing a baby wrapped in a white blanket. The woman's face was not familiar to her, but the baby's was her. She knew it. She felt it in the depths of her being. She held it with both hands. She was running out of air. Tears began to flow uncontrollably. "Who are you?" she whispered with a broken voice. The silence of the attic enveloped her. The dust continued to fall as if the past had awakened. She stayed there, sitting on the wooden floor, her eyes fixed on the image of that woman, trying to put together the pieces of a puzzle she didn't know existed. For years, she had felt like she didn't fit in, that she didn't belong to this family. Now she was beginning to understand why. She went down with the box in her arms, moving slowly, as if carrying something sacred. In the living room, she sat on the old leather sofa, the same one her father used to fall asleep on watching TV. She looked around. Everything was the same. The heavy curtains, the luxurious furniture, the family photos framed in silver, but none of it belonged to her. She picked up the phone and called Valerie. "Where are you?" "At the hospital with Mom." "Why?" "I need to talk to you today." "Are you okay?" "I don't know." Valerie hesitated for a second. "Come to my house in an hour." When she hung up, Camilla looked at the photograph again. That woman had the same eyes as her, the same expression when she was sad, the same gesture when hugging. It was impossible for it all to be a coincidence. At Valerie's house, the atmosphere was different, less luxurious, more modern, but just as cold. Her children were playing a console in the next room. She was making coffee when Camilla arrived. They didn't exchange hugs, just tense glances. "What's wrong?" Valerie asked, setting the cup on the table. Camilla took out the photo and placed it in front of her. "Do you know her?" Valerie looked at her, confused. "No. Did you ever see her? Who is she?" Camilla placed the letter to one side, then the medical folder. "This was in the attic." Valerie read in silence. Her facial expression transformed with every line. When she finished, she sank into the chair. "Are you saying that, Mom? That she's not your mother?" "I don't know, but someone gave me up, and Mom knew. She hid everything." Valerie covered her mouth with her hands. It wasn't feigned. She was shocked. I always suspected something was strange. Mom never treated you like me. She was always harder on you, more distant. But I never thought this." "Did you know?" "No, I swear I didn't. If I had known, I would have told you." Camilla remained silent. Her gaze was a whirlwind of emotions. "What do we do now?" Valerie got up, walked to a shelf, and pulled out a box of photos. She placed it on the table and began to look through them. After a few minutes, she found one that caught her attention. It was an old party, many guests, a woman in the background who looked familiar. "Look," she said, pointing to the figure. "It's her." Camilla took the photo. She moved closer. It was blurry, but yes. It was the same woman. She was at a Hayes family party. How did she get there? "I don't know, but this confirms something. She was close." Camilla felt a chill. The voice of the man on the rooftop sounded in her head again. The attic is full of truths that not everyone wants you to see. She took the photo, the letter, the sonogram, and the folder. She put them in her bag. "I'm going to find her, or her story. I don't care what it costs." Valerie didn't answer, just watched her leave. The door closed, and the truth was just beginning to show its real face. The sun was setting like lead over the city rooftops, but inside the house, the cold was different. It had nothing to do with the weather. It was an emotional cold, the kind that gets into your skin and doesn't go away with blankets or heating. Camilla walked back and forth with the medical file still in her bag and the photo of the woman who could be her biological mother, the one holding her in her arms with a tenderness she never found in the face of the woman who raised her. Every step brought her closer to the abyss of the unknown. She knew there was no going back. She knew that soon she would have to look Eleanor in the eyes and ask. Not to ask for permission, not to seek affection, just to demand the truth. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Valerie called her early. "Mom is unstable again. She's home. The doctor will be here this afternoon. If you're going to tell her anything, do it now." Camilla didn't answer immediately. She heard the sound of traffic on the line, her sisters held breath, the weight of the unspoken words. "I'm coming over," she finally answered. That house, the same one she grew up in, no longer felt like hers. The structure was the same, but everything inside had changed. Or perhaps it was never what she thought it was. She found Eleanor sitting in her usual armchair with her wool blanket on her lap, her eyes fixed on the turned-off television. Hearing the door, she barely turned her head. "So, you finally deigned to come," she said in a hoarse voice. Camilla approached slowly. Her mother looked at her like she was assessing an intruder. "I need to talk to you. I have nothing to say to you." "Well, I do." She sat down opposite her, resting her bag on her lap. She opened it and took out the photo. First, she held it in the air. Who is this? Eleanor looked at her without blinking. For a few seconds, she seemed confused. Then her face changed. Where did you find that? In the attic, among your things. Who is she? You have no right. Who is she? Camilla insisted, her eyes moist. She's nobody. That woman is dead. Don't talk about what you don't understand. Was she my mother? The word hung in the air. Eleanor got up with difficulty. The blanket fell to the floor. I'll disinherit you. Do you hear me? If you keep digging, I'll cut you out of everything. Camilla looked at her with unshakable calm. I was never part of it anyway. I was never your real heir. Eleanor pursed her lips. She staggered a little but didn't give in. You don't know what you're saying. You don't know what happened. Then tell me. I don't have to justify myself to you. Camilla stood up. Why do you hate me so much? Why did you raise me if you didn't want to? Eleanor began to cry, but it wasn't a cry of repentance. It was a cry full of fury and shame. Because it was an obligation. Because no one asked me if I wanted another child. Because you appeared one day, and your father imposed you on me. And you know what? He loved you more than us. It was always obvious. That's why Valerie hates you. That's why I despised you, because you arrived and displaced us all. The words fell like stones on Camilla's chest. Rage rose from her stomach, but something else dominated her, sadness. A sadness so old she didn't know if it was hers, or if she had inherited it. Then it's true, she finally said. I'm not your daughter. You were not. But you became a burden I never wanted to carry. Camilla nodded slowly, put the photo away, and said no more. She walked out the door with her eyes full of contained tears. Valerie was in the kitchen, pretending not to listen, but her face was white as marble. Did you know all that? Camilla asked. No, she said. But Mom always left clues. I was her pride. You were her shadow. That's why I ignored you too. Valerie looked at her harshly. Because you won Dad over. He protected you. He only demanded excellence from me. And that hurt you? It broke my heart. They both fell silent. There was so much accumulated pain that words barely reached it. Valerie, what else did they hide from me? Valerie crossed her arms. I don't know everything, but Mom had a man who used to visit her secretly years ago, after Dad died. She called him the archivist. Did you meet him? No, I only saw him once. He had a briefcase. Mom always gave him envelopes and money. Camilla remembered the man on the rooftop. The same one who had watched her from the car. The same one who told her the attic held secrets. It was him. That night, while checking her emails, she received a strange notification, a direct message to her personal account, with no name, no sender. Clear. I'm ready to give you what they always denied you. I'll wait for you tomorrow at 6 at the cafe on Liberty Street. Camilla didn't know if she should go, but fear no longer stopped her. Doubt was heavier than any truth. The next day she arrived punctually. The cafe was half empty. There was one man alone at a table by the window. It was him. He wore the same coat, the same hat. The briefcase was on the table. Camilla approached, trying to control the trembling in her hands. Are you the archivist? That depends on who's asking. I'm Camilla, the daughter, or whatever I am. The man offered her a seat. Then he opened the briefcase calmly, took out a thick envelope, and slid it toward her. Your mother hired me more than 30 years ago. She paid me to eliminate all traces of a young woman named Natalia Velasquez. But I never completely succeeded. Some things survived. Like you. Camilla took the envelope. Inside were copies of documents, photographs, court reports. Natalia was a minor when she became pregnant. Her parents tried to force her to give the baby up for adoption. She resisted. She was admitted to a private clinic for emotional instability. Camilla was born there, and there she was separated from her mother. Your biological father was a lawyer who worked for the Hayes family. He never acknowledged paternity, but he was close to the husband of the woman who raised you. An agreement was made, a silent adoption all outside official records. And Natalia escaped years later. She lived on the street. No one looked for her. She died in a public hospital. She had schizophrenia, but until the end she asked about you. Camilla felt her whole body breaking into pieces. Every word from the man was a bullet to the soul. Why are you telling me this now? Because I have nothing to lose anymore, and you deserve to know everything. The man got up, left a card with a number. When you're ready, I have more, but only if you want to continue. Camilla was left alone with the envelope in her hands. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in front of an empty box. Inside, she placed all the evidence, the letters, the photos. She closed it and wrote a word on the lid. Truth. Because that truth finally had a name, a face, and could no longer be ignored. Camilla sat in front of the box that contained her origin, like someone sitting in front of an altar. There was no incense or prayers, but there was the sacred weight of an entire life that had been built on a lie carefully polished for years. Natalia Velasquez. That name, which until recently was just ink on paper, now echoed like a familiar sound in her mind. The photo, the letters, the medical reports, the file delivered by the archivist, everything fit with surgical precision, and at the same time, everything hurt. The blood running through her veins was not that of the Hayes family. It never was. She decided she couldn't carry this truth alone any longer. This time, she wasn't going to leave without holding up a mirror to the woman who had looked at her with contempt for more than 30 years, without telling her she was an intruder in her own story. That same woman who denied her a childhood, who compared her existence to that of her nephews as if she were a miscalculation. That woman who had raised her, yes, but without tenderness, without patience, without love. That woman who always made her feel like a burden. Upon arriving at the family home, she found Eleanor in the living room, dressed as always, elegant even to sit and have tea by the window. Her face was rigid, her gaze distant, as if the passage of time did not touch her skin but hardened her soul. Camilla stood in front of her without speaking. It was enough to open the box and place it on the table like someone silently throwing a grenade. Eleanor took several seconds to react. Her eyes fixed on Natalia's photo, on the folded letters on the clinical folder. Then she looked up at Camilla. "So you found out," she said with a harsh voice without surprise. Camilla nodded without looking away. "As long as I can remember, you made me feel like an intruder. Now I know why. You never saw me as yours." "Because you weren't," Eleanor replied, letting the words fall with cold cruelty. "I didn't ask for you to come. I didn't look for you. You arrived, and your father forced me to accept you." Camilla felt the air in her lungs thicken. "He forced you?" Natalia was a burden. A sick girl without family, with a pregnancy that threatened to ruin everything. "Your father worked with her family's lawyer. When she was institutionalized, the child was left helpless. You. And he said the right thing was to raise you as our daughter, because it was humane, he said. Humanity, he called it. I called it weakness. It was he who saved me, and he who brought that shame into our house. And then he looked at you as if you were a jewel. At you, while demanding excellence from Valerie. You only had to breathe for him to adore you. Do you know what it was like to live with that?" Camilla stood still, swallowing anger and tears. "And do you know what it was like to grow up here? To feel less than? Not to understand why you hated me? Why you never touched me the way a mother touches her child? Because you were the biggest mistake of my life." The phrase crashed against Camilla's chest like an axe. "You were the shadow of everything I wanted to forget, of everything I hated about your father, his betrayal, his false compassion. And now you come to ask me what? Forgiveness? Acceptance? I have nothing for you. Nothing." Camilla closed the box and stood up. Her voice came out low, broken, trembling. "I didn't come to ask for anything. I just wanted to hear it from you, so I could leave without guilt." Eleanor didn't respond. She didn't even look at her as she walked away. Valerie was in the hallway, having heard everything. She didn't try to stop her, just walked her to the door. "Did you know all that?" Camilla asked. "No. But now everything makes sense. Mom was never the same after you arrived. I thought it was jealousy, but it was hate. A hatred she hid behind elegance and perfect dinners. Dad loved me, right?" Valerie looked down. "He adored you more than me, and I knew it. That's why I unconsciously pulled away from you. I couldn't compete with your silence, with your pain. I just wanted to be enough for him, and you were just by existing." Camilla gently touched her arm. For the first time, there was no resentment between them. Only shared pain. "I'm going to look for Natalia," Camilla said. "Where?" "Wherever this truth takes me. Wherever." The archivist had left her a clue. In one of the reports, the name of the last institution where Natalia was seen appeared. The St. Anthony Home, a public residence for women without resources located on the city's periphery. Camilla went the next day. The building was gray, with rusted bars and peeling walls. As she entered, the smell of disinfectant and old sadness enveloped her like a damp blanket. She asked for Natalia. The nurse who attended her, an older woman with a kind face, frowned at the name. "Velasquez. Yes, she was here a few years ago. She was very sweet, although sometimes her mind wandered far away. She said she had a daughter. She always talked about her baby. She cried for her." Camilla felt her legs giving way. "Where is she now?" The nurse lowered her gaze. "She passed away 2 years ago. Heart problems. She died peacefully alone but at peace." Camilla covered her mouth. The cry came out muffled. 2 years. 2 damn years of difference between life and reunion. Her real mother had been within reach of her hands and was no longer there. The nurse took her hand. She asked me to give this to anyone who came looking for her someday. She pulled out a small, light wooden box. Inside was a letter written in shaky, childlike handwriting. Camilla opened it carefully. My daughter, even if you never acknowledge me, I always loved you. They wouldn't let me have you. They tore my life out when they took you from my arms. I was never well after that. But every night, I spoke to you in silence, imagining you thought of me too. I wish I could have hugged you once, just once. I don't know if you'll ever look for me, but if you do, I want you to know it wasn't my choice. I waited for you until the end. Camilla closed her eyes. Tears rolled without permission. She sat on a bench in the hallway with the letter pressed against her chest. There was no body to hug. There was no fresh grave, just a broken story, a stolen childhood, a motherhood snatched away by silence, by greed, by the need to appear perfect. Blood does not always unite, but sometimes souls do. That night, Camilla took flowers to a forgotten cemetery in a humble area. She asked for the name in the register. Natalia Velasquez, Lot 17, Row 9. Grave without a headstone, just a number. She left the flowers, lit a candle, took out a sheet of paper, and wrote her own letter. Mom, I don't know how to start. They tore me from your arms before I met you, and they tore you from mine before I could look for you. They raised me without love, but your absence felt like a presence. Now I understand why you lived thinking of me, and I grew up feeling you without knowing you existed. We didn't get to hug, but this letter is a hug. I found you, and I will never forget you. Rest in peace, Mom. Your daughter, Camilla. She left it on the dirt next to the candle and walked away in silence. And for the first time, she felt that she was no longer alone. Camilla walked through the cemetery with red eyes, her biological mother's letter still beating in her hands. The cold wind ruffled her hair, but it didn't make her tremble. She had crossed a threshold from which there was no turning back. Her story was no longer that of a rejected daughter, nor that of a woman broken inside. Now it was the story of a truth revealed, and even though it hurt, it finally belonged to her. She returned home without speaking to anyone. She got into bed with her clothes on and hugged her children while they slept. Ethan opened his eyes just a little. Are you okay, Mom? She hugged him tighter. Now I am, my love. Now I am. Christmas was just a few days away. In other times, that date caused her anxiety. The comparisons, the silences, the distance with her sister, her mother's looks that stripped her bare with contempt, without need of words. But this time would be different. She would no longer go as the submissive daughter waiting for a smile. She was going to walk through that door with her head held high, with her story on her skin, with her children by the hand, not out of obligation but for closure. Laura, her best friend, showed up that morning with a container full of cookies. Are you really going? Camilla nodded without hesitation. Not for them. For me. I don't want my children to grow up without knowing that their mother had the courage to face her history. I need them to see me take my place at that table. Not as a guest, but as someone who deserves to be there. Laura looked at her with a mixture of admiration and concern. If they hurt you again, they can't hurt what is already healed. The afternoon of the 24th was calm. Camilla and her children wrapped gifts, baked cookies, played carols, and decorated with colored lights that blinked as if the world were a kind place. At 6, they dressed carefully. Ethan wore a white shirt with a blue tie, and Lucy chose a dress with embroidered flowers. Camilla styled her hair simply and wore the same necklace her father gave her for her 15th birthday. She didn't need more. Her greatest adornment was her recovered dignity. The Hayes residence had the lights on early. From afar, the Christmas glow seemed to announce a night of celebration, but Camilla knew the real storm had yet to break. She rang the doorbell with the children by her side. An employee opened the door and looked at her in surprise. Good evening, Camilla said serenely. We're here for dinner. Valerie appeared in the reception area seconds later. She stood motionless. The tension was evident, but her eyes shone with a mixture of nervousness and relief. Are you sure you want to come in? I'm sure I don't want to leave. Valerie opened the door completely. The children entered first. Camilla followed without looking back. In the living room, decorated with gold lights and a giant artificial tree that looked more like a magazine photo than a home, Eleanor was seated as always in her wine-colored dress, her face perfectly made up, and her hands in her lap. Seeing her, she didn't say a word. She looked at her with a neutral, almost empty expression. I thought we made this clear, she said coldly. You made it clear, Camilla replied. I never spoke. Valerie poured wine into glasses while the other guests took their seats. A distant aunt, a cousin who talked too much, Valerie's children dressed as if for a photo shoot. The atmosphere was charged with false cordiality. No one mentioned Camilla's or her children's presence, but the looks said it all. The dinner began with empty toasts and awkward smiles. Camilla cut the turkey without waiting for it to be offered. She served her children, ate in silence. She listened to loose comments about the economy, politics, society gossip, until Eleanor spoke. Valerie, you should tell everyone the good news. About the beach house. Valerie swallowed and smiled without enthusiasm. It's not confirmed yet. Of course it is. If that scoundrel doesn't show up, it's yours. You're entitled. Camilla looked up. Entitled to what? Eleanor ignored her. She continued drinking wine as if she hadn't spoken. Camilla put the fork down on her plate. Why don't we talk about something else? The guests tensed. What do you want to talk about, Camilla? Eleanor asked without looking at her. The truth. About what this family has been hiding for more than 30 years. The silence was immediate. Only the background Christmas music was heard, absurd and out of place. Today is not the time for drama, a cousin said, trying to break the tension. Camilla stood up. For me, it's the perfect time, because my whole life I was made to feel like I didn't fit in, and now I know why. Valerie put her glass on the table. She knew what was coming. I am not this woman's biological daughter, Camilla said with a firm voice. I was adopted in secret. My mother, Natalia Velasquez, was institutionalized by order of a wealthy family who could not stand the shame of an impregnated daughter with mental health issues. I was taken from her arms at birth. I was brought into this house as a favor, as a debt, as a mistake they never forgave me for. The aunt dropped her silverware. A murmur went around the table. Eleanor didn't flinch. That is not a matter for dinner conversation, she said without raising her voice. It certainly is, because for years you denied me the right to know who I was. And you, looking directly at Eleanor, you made me believe I was insufficient. You treated me like a burden, like an intruder. You never hugged me. You never told me you loved me. Now I understand why. Valerie stood up. It's true, she said, her voice trembling. Camilla discovered everything. I helped her. Mom, why did you hide it for so long? Eleanor took a deep breath. Because it didn't deserve to be known. Because some things are better buried. Even people? Camilla asked. The woman's eyes became moist. For an instant, the makeup failed to hide the fragility. Your father forced me. I didn't want you. And he loved me, Camilla whispered. And he stopped loving me because of you. The confession fell like a slab onto the table. He took everything that was mine and gave it to you. I was a baby, Camilla said, her voice breaking. It wasn't my fault. But you were my punishment. The wine glass slipped from Eleanor's hand and fell to the floor, shattering into 1,000 pieces. The woman tried to get up, but her body trembled. She clung to the edge of the table. Valerie ran to hold her. Eleanor collapsed into the chair, her eyes rolling back, her breathing labored. Call an ambulance. Valerie screamed. Camilla knelt in front of her. Eleanor could barely keep her eyes open. Mom, look at me. I'm here. Don't call me that, the woman whispered. You are not my daughter. Camilla took her hand. Maybe I'm not, but you raised me with your hate, with your silence, and I survived. The ambulance arrived in minutes. They took Eleanor away on a stretcher. Before they loaded her, Camilla leaned close to her ear. I forgive you. Not for you, but for me. And as the door closed, Camilla felt something she had never felt in that house, freedom. The ambulance drove away with Eleanor inside, enveloped in the sound of the siren and the wheels against the asphalt. The red lights faded into the night like a sign of something that had no return. Camilla remained on the threshold for several more seconds, looking straight ahead without moving, her children clinging to her sides, and her heart beating with a strange peace that was not born of happiness, but of relief. The cycle was closed. The Hayes house was left in an awkward silence. The guests began to leave with apologies squeezed between their teeth, not knowing whether they lamented the situation or were just trying to get away from the emotional weight they had just witnessed. Valerie didn't say a word. She remained seated at the table, staring intently at the remains of the turkey and the half-melted candles, as if they were ruins of a dinner that never really was. Camilla approached her, putting a hand on her shoulder. I wish you peace, Valerie. Truly. Valerie didn't respond. She just nodded very slightly without lifting her gaze. Her eyes were shining, but not with compassion. It was something else. Pain, perhaps confusion, jealousy, who knows. Silence also had multiple meanings, and in that instant, neither of them wanted to decipher it. 3 weeks passed. Eleanor was still alive, although unrecognizable. The diagnosis was clear: a severe stroke caused by the emotional collapse she suffered at dinner. Her right side was paralyzed, her speech impaired. She spent her days in a private hospital bed with a dull face, her eyes lost between the present and a past that seemed to fade like ink in the rain. Camilla went to see her on the 3rd day alone. Then she returned with her children and continued to do so week after week. Not out of duty, not out of nostalgia, but because she knew that if she didn't properly close every wound, her story would be repeated in them. She wasn't going to allow it. Lucy used to bring her drawn flowers. Ethan stayed at the door, watching in silence. Eleanor looked at them as if they were shadows. Sometimes she squeezed Camilla's hand without saying anything. There were no words, but there was presence. "Hello, Mom," Camilla would say gently, as if the woman in front of her was not the same one who denied her everything for 3 decades. She would brush her hair, put perfume on her, talk to her about simple things, and before leaving, she would place a notebook on the nightstand where she wrote a fragment of her story, a part of her truth, every day. Valerie did not return. She called the clinic once a week, just to find out if her mother was still alive. She didn't ask about Camilla, not about the children. She was dealing with her own ruins. Her husband had officially disappeared. Debts surrounded her like chains. The beach house was quietly sold. Appearances had finally given way to reality. Meanwhile, Camilla began to rebuild herself from a different place. She used the nights to write. Every line was a liberation. She remembered the cold of her childhood, the absent tenderness, the strange looks. She remembered the silence, especially that long, dense silence, full of unspoken truths that had accompanied her like a faithful shadow. She titled it The Price of Silence. She wrote not to blame, but to understand, to prevent others from living the same. Her story was not unique. There were thousands like hers, invisible, silenced by fear, shame, obedience. She knew she had to speak, scream if necessary, and she did. After finishing the first draft, she shared it with Laura. Her friend read it with tears in her eyes. "You have to publish this. Not as a novel, but as a testimony. This could save lives, Camilla." Camilla hesitated, but she did it. Months later, a non-governmental organization contacted her. They had read her story on a blog that Laura shared without telling her. It was an NGO dedicated to supporting women with mental disorders who had been separated from their children by the system. They sought to give visibility to these cases, generate support, and tear down prejudices. "Your story represents thousands of silenced screams," they told her. "We want you to share it." Camilla accepted. She gave talks, participated in meetings. Her story began to resonate on social media, in small circles, in forgotten communities. People wrote to her telling their experiences. Women thanked her for having said out loud what they didn't dare to even think. The pain stopped being a punishment. It became a bridge. One day, at an open talk, a woman from the audience approached her after the conference. "You're Camilla, right?" "Yes." The woman introduced herself as Clara. She was a retired nurse. She had worked at the clinic where Camilla was born. "I knew your mother, Natalia. She was very young. She always said she loved you. She never stopped talking about you." Camilla hugged her without asking permission. They cried together without saying more. She returned to the cemetery with her children. She showed them Natalia's grave. "The woman who gave me life rests here." Lucy placed a flower. Ethan left a handwritten letter. "Was she our grandmother?" he asked. "Yes, my love. And although I didn't meet her, I know she loved me more than anyone in this life." Returning to the car, Camilla looked at the sky. There were no clouds, just a clean clarity, as if the universe had decided to grant her a little peace. That night, while tucking her children in, she told them a made-up story. It spoke of a girl who had been born in darkness, but one day decided to turn on her own light. She didn't need to be accepted. She didn't wait for permission. She just wanted to be free. Ethan asked, "And what happened to the girl?" "She became the woman she was meant to be. Not perfect, but free." Before going to sleep, she sat at her desk and wrote the last sentence of her book. Sometimes love doesn't come from whom we expect, but it is always present, hidden in the most invisible corners of the human soul. And that night, for the first time in her life, she slept without fear. What did you think of this story? There are many people who, like Camilla, are fighting silent battles every day. Our hope is that her voice has also resonated within you. If this story touched your heart, share it. Make more people feel accompanied. Be part of the change. Tell us in the comments what you would have done in her place. What city are you watching us from? Reading you makes us feel closer to you. And if you haven't already, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Every gesture from you is a sign that these stories must continue to be told. Don't leave yet. Our next moving story is already appearing on your screen. Click on any of them and continue exploring this universe of real, moving, and necessary stories. Thank you for being here. Thank you for feeling with us. We send you a big hug wherever you are.